severe conditions in mountains, therefore it's shown in our spirit. If to compare these 50 minutes which passed in a cage and to compare all this life which passed in mountains, then I consider it's incomparable. Why do you have best fighters in the world? Because of warriors lived in this area in the past. Because it was a road to Europe and to Asia, and our people their whole life were at war, and it's in our blood. We lived together 15 brothers in the same house. My father made us train in the morning and in the evening. It was similar to army life.
March on! Khabib, are you weak at escalations? March on! So I'll show you how to break the regime.
We go down, enough rest. In this hall, my first job as a trainer has begun. At that time, I had 4 balls. There was an exception room. I had sold 4 balls and begun the repairment of the hall. The first my investment in sport. It was well-fixed good fellows. Work is made unconscious. Now there's hitting. I have created conditions here. It was impossible to dream of it. There were 2 big flanks, water was heated, bathing with a mug. Back that time there was a cold water in stream only. Conditions were of course Spartan. The father constantly created competitions for me. In a house and in the gym and competitions always competed with the strongest. The father especially created with such conditions, so that or they could just break me or could I move further. Tradition which here to me passed from my trainer and so remained. It's clapping the hands, it's blow by a stick or a whistle. Each exercise is followed by the word at the end to add. Has added, has added, has added. He knew how many it's necessary to do. It's the first house which Nurmagomedov's family bought after resettlement from Tumadinsky district, the village of Sildi. Here we lived with the father, with mother. Also here my elder brother Abdulmanap married with Fatimatka. Here were born the children, the first son Magomed, after Khabib, and the last one the daughter Amina. We lived in this 2-storied house. Behind there was a garbage yard and set the task. Every day somebody had to clean it. So it was every day, early in the morning after exercising, they took out 3-4 buckets of garbage. Thus in 1.5 months they cleaned at all territory. 80 meters long and 14 meters wide. Someone presented to our close neighbor, Mr. Saidovich, 2 beers. One has died and the second remained. And Khabib constantly played with this beer cup. And the Khabib has begun to fight and be pushed with him, and then it has turned to fight automatically itself without noticing. Time well. Well done. Discipline and consistency. This was the main argument of our coaches, so all the training was written down. There were a lot of punishments. I said to the father I don't want to study, he punished. When my father explained to me with the words I didn't understand, with the fist I was understanding immediately. Because if he hadn't punished me, I think that I could have become the serious hooligan, for example. What's up? Enjoy your vacation. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. Are there no more skewers? We almost never call this person, but he comes. Nobody even knows him by his name. Go. Hey, let's make a circle. Let's see. He could always give anybody a punch. As he always says, his record is on the streets better than in UFC and in a professional ring. He constantly put up these fights. He spoke to the elder cousins, bro. When we approach them, don't talk, just punch, we'll fight. From it, he derived some kind of pleasure. Who would like to play? Who wants to play? Who wants adult games? Come on. Goros, so you have nothing to lose in this life, come on. Your hands, your legs, your head, all these are called weapons. Hey, Islam, don't force me to talk to the Damascus steel. It doesn't talk much, it can explain only once. I hold myself many times, but sometimes there is a wish to punch an ugly face, especially when someone nags me. I see how he can punish his younger cousin. I was punished, now I have grown up. Let young people also grow. We have disobedient one there. Khabib specifically abuses him, beats even him, specifically beats. Come on, let us show you dance, let's go. Now boxing, show this one. Let lecturing knees to beat knee too. This is my cousin. Hold your hands, good, come on. You cannot train a lot. At us, it is considered as a shame if you take offense at the father or take offense at the elder brother. If you're punished, it means you have deserved it. Better than only wrestling, I always liked MMA, where all its authorized beats, chokes, throws. I spoke to my father and always asked, transfer me to MMA. Transfer me to the fight. He spoke to me too early. You're only 17, 18 years old. He was always saying that it's too early. We've had a lot of injuries, the finger break, the arm break. In this regard, he always had problems. Height 178 centimeters, weight 76 kilograms, two-time world champion in combat sambo. Azerbaijani fighter was then Nurmagomedov. At that time I was young, he was already experienced fighter. I just wanted to prove to my father that I was not at the level at which he used to see me. But for parents, we always remain children, and we went to this fight. Probably my father was nervous more than me in the locker room. I felt it. I won the fight ahead of schedule, made my opponent to give up. I was very happy. I went to my father and asked, "You doubted?" He laughed. The victor in the battle won Khabib Nurmagomedov. Are you proud of your son? No, this is not by religion, not manly. It's not necessary to be proud. If you're given by God some talent or gift, there is no reason to be proud of. 16 fights, I thought much has been proved, however it wasn't. Many critics were there. I signed up in UFC. At that time it was considered impossible in Russia. I signed up and on my fight was ranked Russia's entire level of MMA. I wish that he fought in judo, an Olympic sport, but all the time he was saying, I want to be a fighter in the UFC. When he was 16 years old, it seemed that this is such a comic dream. 3 months to prepare. All these 3 months I was thinking about it. There wasn't 1 second and I was thinking about something else. Even when I slept, I dreamed of how I'm going to fight. Joyce then woke up the next morning. Turned out that it's nothing supernatural. Won? Okay, and what's next? Then won the second fight, won the third fight, and won the fourth. Now such serious emotional splash doesn't cause it in me. Khabib, you can call him a pioneer. He was the first person who was subscribed to UFC. After him, UFC started signing other fighters from Russia. 8 UFC fighters. This is the first time we have gathered them at one table applauding. Look at the streets of Dagestan. Every second is with the broken ears. Who are they? Wrestlers. I just come to here to Dagestan. I'm just surprised. Where is in fact the kind of money? I mean, the Republic has not so good life, but the sports halls are perfect. Nowhere in any country in the world you can find it. Here are the best conditions for the martial arts, and the conditions are just as wrestlers. Now all these conditions will automatically move to MMA. My father is considered as the father of MMA in Dagestan. Because of my father grew up 4 UFC fighters, more than 20 world champions in combat sambo. I think that his merit really hard to be eclipsed by somebody in future. My favorite game is chess. In the tactical plan, I very often overplay my rivals. You shall leave trash, be ahead of him by 2-3 steps. It's similar to chess. Give a pawn, took a horse. I very often approach cage. I shake it from below, up an angle, directly. It's also one of the methods to win the rivals, but we keep working on it. We don't try to purchase a ticket close to rival's corner. We try to listen what is told in a corner by the rival, then it's translated to us. It's necessary to know what they're talking about in corner after the first round. It's very important information. I wasn't even on a single fight of Khabib in USA because I got a list of 140 people whose visas were cancelled. My visa was also cancelled for 3 years. Well, even I didn't see my father, I felt 100% he would shout here, that I wouldn't stop, that I constantly kept moving, put pressure. And when I fought in a corner, I felt that my father is watching my fight on TV.
Introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner, a mixed martial artist.
In the psychological plan, it was very heavy to break the bow. It was the second fight when I was fighting on a strong will. I just kept pushing on him, went on him all the way, constantly attacked him, and won by unanimous decision. It was a very heavy fight. The fear can kill everything. You can bury everything.
In his mixed martial arts career.
This photo is special to us. Whole Brazil was against us. Instead of 4 security guards, he was given additional 6 security guards, and he was conducted to a fight by 10 security guards. You shouted everywhere, "We'll make you eat this t-shirt tonight. We'll make you cook broth from a t-shirt." Brazilian fans were shouting.
Combination going, unable to find his range there, and Nurmagomedov floors him.
And then I knocked him out. There was such a silence. I felt like, where are you guys? Where am I? I felt like we're sitting on a commemoration. I climbed in a cage. All I heard was such a dead silence. I have such principle. I go to fight, the rivals go to the fight too. He's going to beat you, to choke and break you. So I'll direct all the efforts for a victory, and I'll fight up to the end. I had 40 days for the training camp. From them 23 days I didn't train, got a leg injury. I was out of training. With a big risk I came for a fight. He even didn't want to fight. He also wasn't fitting in his weight class, but eventually came out for this fight. I set a new UFC record for the most takedowns in a single fight with 21 successful takedowns. I've never dreamed to fly because I know that it's impossible. However, I fulfill the dream of others. I help them to fly an octagon. Your fight against Rafael dos Anjos, is it your favorite fight? Was it the most heavy fight? It's pleasant to me how I dominated him. I look at fight, he didn't have a chance to beat me. It wasn't even close. I don't want to praise myself. I just tell the facts as it was. He spent many forces to strangle me. I tricked him, doing some noises that he thought he's strangling me. Later he understood that he's not strangling me, and I let my head go. From this moment I've understood that he has given up in his soul. There comes such heavy moment when you have to decide to give up or not. Exactly at those moments the real champion is defined.
Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov.
I fought with Dos Anjos. My father couldn't come to me. My uncle came. It was really hard to lose weight without nutritionists. Khabib weighs 88 kilograms today, and it's necessary to weigh 70 kgs for 400 grams. This is not easy to lose 16-17 kgs. I tried to support and look after him, and I was really nervous when he was losing weight, especially last 2-3 kilograms were hard to lose. Uncle says to me, "You have chosen such a serious career, where the best fighters of the world are gathered. 7 billion people from all around the world, and you're fighting with the 5th number in the world, and you're complaining of something? Well, in general, who told you that it will be easy? From the psychologist side in my head, I don't assume the slightest chance that I can lose." He was in work all the time, ate or slept or trained. It can't be this long. Organism has to have a rest, some break. He doesn't drink an alcohol or doesn't smoke. The person has to have relaxation. He practically, I consider, without interruption, has trained for 7 or 8 years without having a rest. These traumas in a row. He didn't fight for 2 years. The best 2 years of his sport biography have been missed. He has been losing. He couldn't talk with anybody, couldn't see anybody or communicate. Here in this room he slept late and said, "I don't know how to be." It was like someone takes and puts you in a jail. It's like you were isolated, but you can go out for a walk to meet your friends. I thought God is showing that I have to leave MMA, but my father has over-persuaded me. He told that after all you have passed and now do you want to withdraw, and you're still speaking about character. The words of parents are everything for all of us. My son was born and I had to wait. The father will make a decision and will tell what name to choose. It looks like I'm an adult person. I'm 44 years old. However, nevertheless, I waited till my father raised a hand and told me to give him such a name. It's a valid tradition. This is the respect for parents. What the senior tell, that's true. For each father in Dagestan there will be one more father. All children gather around them. Wherever we are in USA or in England or somewhere else, we always come and gather near them. Restlessly is to us when they're ache, but other times near them it's always quiet. Before each departure I come to them and they constantly say to me, "We hope it's the last fight, you have proven everything." Then I come after the fight and they tell me to continue. Well, in this life God gave a lot of things to me. Sometimes I think, what for? I have everything. I didn't complain of anything. I've already received more than expected and wanted. I consider that there are better ones than me deserved it, but God chose me. It means it's necessary to prove it.
From bad to worse.
Cassius Clay is a name no more, is that right?
Yes, sir. It's Muhammad Ali. Muhammad means worthy of all praises, and Ali means most high in the Asian African language.
This is the toughest guy on the planet. He turns his back on Christianity. He turns his back on his family's name, and it began the split between people who loved him and people who hated him.
My name is Muhammad. Y'all keep calling me Cassius. I'm tired of telling you. You know you're intelligent. My name is Muhammad Ali, not Cassius.
Was anybody special gave you the name?
Yes, sir. My leading teacher, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Elijah Muhammad's influence is growing. Not only does he give Ali his new name, he introduces him to Sanji Roy, who becomes Ali's first wife in August of '64.
Muhammad Ali had 4 wives: Sanji, Khalila, Veronica, and now Lani. I found the first wife in a strange way, maybe the most interesting. She was very firmly in love with him.
Their honeymoon is short-lived.
We no longer had Cassius Clay. We now had Muhammad Ali, who was a member of the Nation of Islam, which made him very unpopular. It was getting very hard to find a place where he could fight. Originally, the listed rematch was set for Boston. Then Muhammad suffered a hernia. The fight was postponed. Boston washed its hands of it, and it finally wound up in Lewiston, Maine, which is one of the few places that would take it.
Then, 2 months before the rematch, Malcolm X, who had broken with Elijah Muhammad to embrace Orthodox Islam, is gunned down by members of the Nation of Islam on February 21st, 1965.
Muhammad Ali had broken from Malcolm and sided with Elijah Muhammad. So there was concern that Malcolm's followers might exact retribution against Ali.
The rumor had been spread that there was a carload of gunmen coming up from New York to kill Muhammad Ali in the ring.
Ali Liston, too, was a mess. It was a mess outside the ring, and it was a mess once the fight started.
Midway through round one, Ali hits Liston with a blow that would become infamous as the Phantom Punch.
Did you see the punch? Did you see it?
Was it the punch heard around the world? It wasn't even a punch seen around the world.
The punch was hard enough to knock Liston down, but he thought Liston could have gotten up.
It took about 8 seconds after 9 and 10 that the crowd began to chant, fix, fix, fix.
Ali's second disputed win over Liston does little to win over his boxing critics. He has other critics as well.
A certain portion of Black America loved him. Another portion of Black America did not love him. The Black community was divided. Those who thought integration was a great thing, and those who did not think of integration in that way, but thought of equal rights and our freedom, equality, and justice.
I'm not out there marching and going places I'm not wanted.
Those of us who were young, who understood our manhood, and who took pride in it, we were not asking to be a part of white America, but demanding our rights just like any other citizen.
Ali's support of the Nation of Islam's separatist policy alienates many in the civil rights movement, including Floyd Patterson, who turns his November '65 bout with Ali into a social, political, and religious battle.
He said a black Muslim has no place being heavyweight champion in America, and that he, as a Catholic, was going to bring the title back to this country.
Floyd was a nice man, but his approach was what we call an Uncle Tom approach, doing all the things that white America wanted you to do.
You ain't nothing but an Uncle Tom for white people. What's my name, Uncle Tom Negro? I'll jump on you now. What's my name?
When Muhammad Ali got him in the ring, he became pretty cruel in his beating of Floyd. He was really giving him a lesson, talking to him, hitting him and talking to him.
Ali would disable Patterson, then step back, admire his work, and then beat on him some more.
Ali beats Patterson by technical knockout. 2 months later, he sues his wife Sanji for divorce. She'd lost favor with her husband's increasingly influential Muslim inner circle.
They said it was because she wore makeup, she wore daring dresses. They didn't want her because they had already picked out Khalila, who was working in a Nation of Islam restaurant.
His brief marriage now over, so is his 6-year contract with the Louisville sponsoring group. Herbert Muhammad becomes Ali's manager.
Herbert Muhammad was the son of Elijah Muhammad, who Muhammad Ali counted as his spiritual father. Herbert was an extension of that.
Herbert Muhammad joins with pro football superstar Jim Brown and lawyer Bob Arum to form their own boxing promotion company, Main Bout.
What we said was, the heavyweight champion of the world is boxing, and we should control boxing.
But Main Bout can't control the U.S. Draft Board. Ali was rejected for service in '64 when he failed the written test. But the Vietnam War is escalating in February of '66, and the Army has lowered its standards. Weeks before his bout with Ernie Terrell in Chicago, Ali is notified that Uncle Sam wants him.
The fight was doing extraordinarily well when the U.S. government reclassified Muhammad Ali from 1Y and made him 1A, and a television reporter went to Ali, who was training in Miami, before anybody could reach him.
I just don't understand yet how I can be reclassified as 1A without testing me in no way, just calling me like this, and I just don't understand it.
In other words, you think they called you only because you're the heavyweight champion?
And a Muslim, too.
And that's when Ali said, I got nothing against the Viet Cong. They never called me the N-word. Everything hit the fan.
Ali declares that if he's drafted, he won't fight in Vietnam.
Ali put it in racial and religious terms that made him a hero to millions of people who thought that it was a bad war.
When he basically said, I ain't going, a lot of us were kind of like, yeah, baby. I ain't going either. I'm just trying to figure out another way of doing it so that I don't have to go to jail in the process.
Well, then you're not apologizing for the unpatriotic statements that you made.
That'll be taken up with the government.
Ali's unpopular stand causes Chicago politicians to scuttle the Terrell fight, leaving his management looking for another fight in a new venue.
We wanted to fight in Pittsburgh, and they ruled it out there, and then they tried Maine, but they didn't want us in Maine.
The growing controversy over his anti-draft stand makes Ali toxic in the U.S., forcing him to win his next 4 fights in Canada and Europe, where he's a bigger draw than ever. A point not lost on one Texas millionaire.
I got a call from this real character, Judge Roy Hoffines, who owned the Astrodome in Houston, and he said, "You bring that boy down here, nobody is going to tell him he can't fight here."
Ali knocks out Cleveland Williams before a record-setting indoor crowd. Smelling another box office bonanza, New York hosts Ali's next victory over Ernie Terrell. Ali is now 28-0 in the ring and still 1A in the draft. In April of '67, he finally gets his draft notice and reports to the induction center in Houston to begin one of the longest, toughest fights of his life.
Former world heavyweight champion Cassius Clay refused to take the oath of induction into the Army. The black Muslim fighter, who is also known as Muhammad Ali, was immediately stripped of his title by the World Boxing Association.
When a guy says he's not going to fight for his country, that irritates a whole lot of people.
He moved from the sports pages to the front pages.
Within days, Ali is stripped of his license to box in all 50 states.
9 top Negro athletes meet with Cassius Clay to discuss his anti-draft stand.
Jim Brown and Bill Russell organized a summit meeting in Cleveland.
Clay's induction refusal cost him his title, and he faces a possible 5-year prison sentence.
The Army was willing to make a deal. They were willing to guarantee that he'd go in special services and he would be able to box. Behind the scenes, Herbert Muhammad, as a businessman, looked upon that as a possible option.
The meeting started with them talking to Ali about accepting the deal.
You wouldn't have to worry about being a soldier as such. You can do public relations. But Ali's attitude was, nope, don't want a deal.
2 weeks later, Ali is convicted of draft evasion in federal court. Sentenced to 5 years in prison and banned from boxing for 3 years, he remains free while his case is appealed.
Whatever suffering or punishment I may have to take, it'll all be because of my religion.
He was unafraid of the political repercussions, unafraid of any cultural repercussions, unafraid of losing money.
He said he would probably fight again, but it was okay if he didn't. Long as he believed that he was the people's champ, that was good enough for him.
A month after his conviction, Ali marries 17-year-old Belinda Boyd with the approval of Nation of Islam leaders. She fully supports her husband's refusal to be drafted.
He said, "I can't kill anybody." I just said, "Trust me, you'll be the greatest man ever lived if you don't go."
Facing 5 years in prison and unable to fight while appealing his case, newlywed Ali needs to earn money, so he embarks on a college lecture tour.
I would like to hear this from you, and I want the world and the cameras to hear. Who's the heavyweight champion of the world?
The student audiences loved his opposition to the war in Vietnam, but they were very much opposed when he spoke to them against the idea of interracial dating, against the idea of living in the same community.
During those 3.5 years that he wasn't fighting, basically the only 2 things that he was doing was going on college campuses, and the other was being on television with Howard Cosell.
What do you say to that? I predict the fans will be angry at the experts for misleading them so much.
I think that his relationship with Howard Cosell was critical to his acceptance by America.
Howard had the deepest respect for the champ. Howard many times privately defended Ali and Ali's right to express himself and the right to feel the way he felt about where we were with civil rights at those times. But Howard also didn't take any punches. If he felt like Ali had overstepped his bounds, he would confront him. It was part of the chemistry of these guys. You had two gigantic egos.
After 3.5 years in exile, Ali remains free as his appeals proceed in federal court. And while politics cost Ali his boxing license, politics provides a chance to fight again. Georgia has no state boxing commission. Individual municipalities can sanction a fight. So Black State Senator Leroy Johnson strikes a deal with Atlanta's white mayor, Sam Massell.
Leroy Johnson said, I want this fight to happen. I carry a lot of votes with me.
Thus, Ali's comeback begins, surprisingly, in the Deep South.
Here's an African-American reviled around America. Suddenly Atlanta is embracing him.
He said, I got my license. I'm gonna fight in Georgia. I'm gonna fight in Georgia. I said, in Georgia? I said, down south? He said, yeah. I said, oh, Lord, we in trouble now.
Ali returns to the ring on October 26, 1970.
I don't believe that anybody is happier than this young man to once again step into the ring.
28-year-old Ali was stripped of his title, but he's never lost a fight, and Jerry Quarry is not considered competitive. Ali opens a cut over Quarry's eye in round 3, and the fight is stopped.
Inactivity is deadly for any fighter. And for Muhammad Ali to have come back and still display the incredible hand speed and fluidity that he showed was amazing.
While Ali's draft evasion appeal works its way up to the Supreme Court, the NAACP sues the New York State Athletic Commission in federal court, arguing that their ban on Ali is discriminatory. Their ban is lifted. Free to fight in New York again, Ali stops Oscar Bonavena at Madison Square Garden in December 1970.
It's over! Ali is the knockout winner!
Setting up a title shot against Joe Frazier for an unprecedented $5 million purse.
Now we have a chance to see who the real champion of the world is.
That was revolutionary. You know, $2.5 million apiece. Wow.
Back then, that was a vast sum of money.
Even Mickey Mantle was not making that much money.
Well, let Joe Frazier talk all he wants. We got a few rounds to straighten all this mess up.
He brought people to the sport that didn't even necessarily follow boxing. They just liked Muhammad Ali.
I have fixed up the round that Joe Frazier will go down.
You got this person who's standing up and he's been stripped of his title. People wanted to see, who is this guy?
His fights meant more than just the sport of boxing. His fights were like a fight for justice.
Ali was carrying the weight of everything. I don't think it's possible to overstate how much Ali embodied the hopes, aspirations, beliefs of young people in general and young African Americans in particular.
Joe's gonna come out smoking, and I ain't gonna be joking.
The bout is set for March 8, 1971. As the fight approaches, the battle between two unbeaten heavyweights becomes far more than a boxing match.
Get your hands off me.
If you were a liberal, you were rooting for Ali. If you were conservative, you were rooting for Joe.
It was a clash of cultures. There were the people who were demanding civil rights, who were against Vietnam, and the people who thought Vietnam was right. Then, damn it, we're going to put our views in the ring and settle it once and for all. March 8, 71. The world flat out stopped.
The apartment that we lived in was going crazy for that fight.
We were glued to the radio.
I can still see Ali leaning back over the ropes, saying, no contest. Meanwhile, Frazier's pounding him, 20 times.
Ali absorbed an enormous amount of punishment. gave out an enormous amount of punishment.
Yeah, and when the 15th came and they said he'd been knocked down, it was like, this can't be.
Ali gets quickly to his feet, but the damage is done. Ali suffers his first loss. It's Frazier by unanimous decision.
This can't have happened. This is impossible. It was impossible not because we didn't believe Joe Frazier could beat Muhammad Ali. It was impossible because his beating him meant they were right. And they couldn't be right. And the right-wing idiots and the hard hat guys and the ugly Americans, they were standing in the way of history. They were standing in the way of change. They were on the side of wrong. And so they couldn't be right. They just couldn't.
In the first blush of defeat, Ali was gracious and elegant. He was perfect in giving Frazier credit.
I've been always handing out the defeat, so now I'm defeated, and now I can see how other people felt. And when I do come back, if I ever do, I'll have more of a hunger or determination, which is something you lose in the intoxication of so-called greatness.
By the next morning, he'd been robbed.
He went on every late-night talk show. He convinced half of America or more that he had won a fight, and it killed Frazier.
He was the only one who believed, coming out of that fight, that he would be champion again.
4 months after his unanimous loss to Frazier, Ali wins a stunning unanimous decision in the Supreme Court, which overturns his conviction for draft evasion.
I mean, nobody would have believed that that could have happened when Ali refused to step forward.
With prison no longer looming, Ali is free to renew his quest to reclaim the title that had been taken from him, a title now held by George Foreman. Ali's momentous match against Foreman is an event unlike anything boxing has ever seen. In 1974, promoter Don King and a consortium of backers make a deal with Zaire's strongman, President Mobutu Sese Seko, to host a worldwide live satellite broadcast of the Rumble in the Jungle.
Ali basically showed that he could transcend the sport. He brought half of the media of the world to Kinshasa, Zaire.
10 long years after he first shook up the world, 32-year-old Ali is once again challenging a heavily favored champion.
Foreman was the second coming of Sonny Liston.
Remember, this wasn't an ordinary heavyweight. This was a guy who could knock down walls.
Everybody felt that Ali was going to get hurt. This was this was a monster.
I was so afraid that George Foreman was going to kill Ali.
Both fighters train in Zaire for the bout on October 30th, but it's Ali who is embraced by throngs of African fans.
It's unreal the amount of people, 10 to 15,000 people in the crowd following him, just shouting his name.
Ali Boumaye. Ali Boumaye. He'd say, stop the car, and he'd get out, and he'd, Boumaye, Boumaye. He just wanted to create a crowd. Pretty soon you couldn't even walk across the street.
All of that worked in Ali's favor. I mean, he was playing psychological games. He's punching voodoo dolls. He's got people beating on drugs. The champ is here. The champ is here.
Me and maybe one other person thought he could beat George Foreman. He believed it. He believed it.
Ali's confidence isn't shared by many boxing experts. But during the fight, Ali would add rope-a-dope to the lexicon and a great new chapter to his legend.
Ali stands back, ties his man up, leans on the rope.
Ali goes back on the ropes, and the ropes go back more. And Foreman misses by that much.
Wild left hand is not scoring.
Angelo sends his corner guys around to the corners. He says, tighten the ropes. And Ali's saying, no, leave him. Ali formed, in his mind, he formed the rope-a-dope right there and then.
To take that kind of punishment from a guy like George, who knocked most guys out like they were rag dolls. I can't fathom taking those kind of blows from a guy who punches that hard. Those punches could crack ribs.
How could you take this in your body? And Ali was taking it.
And Foreman was punching himself out.
I had predicted that Foreman was going to annihilate him. And in between rounds, when he started to wear George down, he said, hey, big fella, what do you think now?
Knock George out.
When Muhammad Ali put George down, he had proven that he is indeed the greatest.
Ali beats Foreman. Humiliates him. He stops and he says, fellas, you'll never know what this means to me. That should have been his retirement. How can you top that?
You went through the trials, your ups and your downs, your glory times. This is the time to retire.
He had proven the point. You can't go any further once you prove the point. And there's something about the romance of athletics that is hard for people to give up.
For him, every fight was another drama, another circus, and he loved every minute of it.
All those available ladies, all this love and admiration. It's very hard to walk away from that.
When Elijah Muhammad dies in February of '75, his son Wallace leads the majority of the Nation of Islam toward traditional Sunni Islam. Ali, who has always had white men in his corner, embraces the change.
Prejudice is a two-way street, you know? He was driving down one side of it at one point in his life. Not unlike Malcolm X, who had a similar journey, and he evolved.
He said, whites can become Muslims. Now he says, so you can become a Muslim. And he hugged me. There wasn't any racism in Ali.
Later that year, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos plays host to the third Ali-Frazier fight, the Thrilla in Manila, on October 1st, 1975.
They'd been the two most dominant fighters of their time. Towards the end of their career, oh, here they are again in this big fight, and this is going to be the culmination of it all.
For both fighters, it would also mark the beginning of the end.
The fight took place at about 11 a.m. Manila time. Outside, the hot Philippine sun was beating down, and inside, this fight between these two great athletes was going on.
These two guys was going at each other like they was going to just kill each other.
They both took an enormous beating. They were both heroic that night.
After 14 rounds of battle in the sweltering heat, Frazier and Ali, both mentally and physically spent, go to their corners to await the final round.
That moment that you're sitting on your stool, your eyes swollen shut, or your legs are gone, you're totally exhausted. You look across and see your opponent, and he is just as in bad shape as you are. All of a sudden, your mind and your heart says, that's ready to go? And either you answer yes or no. Most guys say no. The special ones say yes. Ali was the one who said yes.
Joe couldn't answer the bell. And Ali just passed out in the ring.
It's all over.
He said it was the nearest thing to dying.
In the year after his punishing victory over Frazier, Ali defends his title 4 times, including a brutal 15-round win over Ken Norton. His longtime ring doctor, Ferdy Pacheco, sees the writing on the wall.
Pacheco went to Norton's locker room and told him, congratulations, you just ended Ali's career. Norton had lost, but Ali was physically beat up.
The following year, his speed and skills diminished. Ali survives a 15-round slugfest with Ernie Shavers,
Muhammad Ali, not down but hurt.
the hardest-hitting heavyweight in boxing.
Said that Ernie Shavers hit me so hard that my ancestors in Africa turned over in their graves. Which was a fabulous line, except the way that he said it was just the beginning of a slur in his speech.
In February of '78, Ali loses his title to Leon Spinks, a novice with just 7 fights under his belt. But he's not done yet.
Fights Spinks again, beats him, regains the title, and then Don King gets Ali to fight Larry Holmes, and I was absolutely horrified.
The Holmes bout is set for October 1980, a year after Ali's last fight against Spinks. His deterioration is evident.
Even to those of us who never looked at Ali with clear eyes, it was clear that he was done.
Holmes wins by TKO in the 11th round, the first time Ali has ever failed to go the distance.
Whatever damage had been done to Ali in all of these 12, 15-round fights, all of that had come together to leave him a shell of what he once was.
A year later, Ali steps into the ring one last time to fight Trevor Berbick on December 11th, 1981.
The whole family went, and up until the fight, we were begging him in his hotel room, don't fight, you don't need to do this anymore.
After the loss to Berbick, Ali finally calls it a career.
It's hard to tell a champ that it's time, it's over, because we always believe we can always win that fight.
Ali fought. That's what he did. And we who loved him really had no say in it and no right to say, no, we don't want you to fight anymore because it ruins our memory. Well, he had a right to say, I will choose when I'm going to leave it. And he did.
The first few years of retirement were hard for Ali. He was no longer in the spotlight as heavyweight champion of the world. But the worst thing was that the Parkinson's syndrome was becoming clearer and clearer.
When you stay in the ring too long, it's going to really start wearing down on you, and that's exactly what happened to my father.
Ali's Parkinson's syndrome is made public in 1984.
It's really hard for me and everyone else to see a man who used to be so great with words. Now that's one of the things that he can't do.
It's a sad thing because you wonder what he would be saying now.
We need that Louisville lip because there's nobody speaking for African Americans or Americans like Ali spoke. That voice just isn't there.
When Ali stopped really talking in public and really doing his whole Ali thing, he has said so much that it still echoes.
I have enough inside here and inside here to replay it for life.
We're in a hotel room in Las Vegas at an event, and this is like 90s, so the Parkinson's he can still walk, but he's talking very soft. And he goes, I want to make it to heaven, and I wasn't a perfect person, and this Parkinson's shut me down. I can't do nothing wrong now, But he said, I'd rather suffer now than in the hereafter.
By 1986, Ali is 5 years into retirement and on his third marriage. He and his second wife, Khalila, were divorced in 1975.
He was doing a lot of cheating. He's weak for women. I just didn't know how weak he was.
Ali's next marriage to Veronica Porsche would last 10 years.
My father would say he was the best Muslim he could be, given that he was this gorgeous Adonis boxer that all the women loved.
In the summer of '86, Ali and Veronica are divorced. Later that year, he marries his fourth wife, Lonnie Williams, who he first met in Louisville back in 1963. In 1996, Ali would make a memorable return to the global spotlight.
We were thinking who would be an American Olympian who could light the cauldron that would mean the most to people watching around the globe. Ali was the guy who made the most sense. And it was not met with wide open endorsement. There were some people who said, well, he was a draft dodger, wasn't he?
Misher and Ali's longtime friend Howard Bingham work out a deal in which they agree to keep Ali's torchlighting role a secret.
Howard Bingham calls me, your dad's lighting the torch. Don't tell anyone. Just call your sisters and brothers.
And I'm in a control room at the bottom of the stadium with 26 cameras and, directing the world feed. But even down there, in the bowels of the stadium, I could hear what was going on up there. And I never dreamed that it would be that strong and that powerful.
When my father gets nervous, he shakes more. So he's shaking the torch, and I'm like, oh, Lord, they're going to burn down the stadium.
There was a part of me saying, oh, my God, look at Muhammad. Feeling sorry. But then there was the other part of me said, for God's sake, that's Muhammad Ali.
To have predicted in 1967 how much Ali and his personality would resonate around the world 20 or 30 years later, There were a lot of people that would have said that will never happen.
The transformation of Ali from the most hated man in America to this beatified Ali of today.
A complete reversal. But those of us who believed we were in the right back in the 60s, this simply validates it. That, hey, you finally came around. You know, you couldn't stop the march of history. He saw where it was going. He pointed the way. You hated him for it, but you couldn't stop it.
Ali is awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in January 2005. Later that year, the nonprofit Muhammad Ali Center opens in downtown Louisville, not far from where his bike had been stolen over 50 years before.
His legacy is that when you believe in yourself, no matter what the odds are, if you're on the right side of history, and if you perfect your craft, you can accomplish anything.
He stood up on a level that nobody else stood up, and he had a platform that no one else had, risking his personal success and his personal wealth to basically tell the truth.
People today are fond of saying, yes, Muhammad Ali stood up for his principles, but there's been a determined effort to wipe away cognizance of what those principles once were. Don't wipe out the memories of what Muhammad stood for in the 1960s. Take it, build on it, and show how Muhammad Ali and America both changed and came together in the end.
He was no saint. He was no devil. He was Muhammad Ali.
Time well. Well done. Discipline and consistency. This was the main argument of our coaches, so all the training was written down. There were a lot of punishments. I said to the father I don't want to study, he punished. When my father explained to me with the words I didn't understand, with the fist I was understanding immediately. Because if he hadn't punished me, I think that I could have become the serious hooligan, for example. In this hall, my first job as a trainer has begun. At that time, I had 4 balls. There was an exception room. I had sold 4 balls and begun the repairment of the hall. The first my investment in sport. It was well-fixed good fellows. Work is made unconscious. Now there's hitting. I have created conditions here. Severe conditions in mountains, therefore it's shown in our spirit. If to compare these 50 minutes which passed in a cage and to compare all this life which passed in mountains, then I consider it's incomparable. Why do you have best fighters in the world? Because of warriors lived in this area in the past. Because it was a road to Europe and to Asia, and our people their whole life were at war, and it's in our blood. We lived together 15 brothers in the same house. My father made us train in the morning and in the evening. It was similar to army life.
March on. Khabib, are you weak at escalations?
March on. So I'll show you how to break the regime. We go down, enough rest. It was impossible to dream of it. There were two big flanks, water was heated, bathing with a mug. Back that time there was a cold water in stream only. Conditions were of course Spartan. The father constantly created competitions for me. In a house and in the gym and competitions always competed with the strongest. The father especially created with such conditions, so that or they could just break me or could I move further. Tradition which here to me passed from my trainer and so remained. It's clapping the hands, it's blow by a stick or a whistle. Each exercise is followed by the word at the end to add. Has added, has added, has added. He knew how many it's necessary to do. It's the first house which Nurmagomedov's family bought after resettlement from Tumadinsky district, the village of Sildi. Here we lived with the father, with mother. Also here my elder brother Abdulmanap married with Fatimatka. Here were born the children, the first son Magomed, after Khabib, and the last one with the daughter Amina. We lived in this two-stored house. Behind there was a garbage yard and set the task. Every day somebody had to clean it. So it was every day, early in the morning after exercising, they took out 3-4 buckets of garbage. Thus in 1.5 months they cleaned at all territory. 80 meters long and 14 meters wide. Someone presented to our close neighbor, Mr. Saidovich, 2 beers. One has died and the second remained. And Khabib constantly played with this beer cup. And the Khabib has begun to fight and be pushed with him. And then it has turned to fight automatically itself without noticing.